Now, it is episode 10 of the Monaghan Way, the podcast series brought to you in association with Northern Sound, with myself, Sean McCaffrey. And it's just that little reminder to you as well, you can catch up on our previous 9 podcasts now, as always, on YouTube, on your streaming channel there, of course, on Apple and on the platforms, any of your Android platforms or where you pick up on your podcast. You're more than welcome to check in on those. We're looking forward to the All-Ireland final this weekend. Of course, it is Donegal taking on Kerry. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by a GA pundit and coach. If you're listening in regularly to our weekend programmes, you will be familiar with the name of Diarmuid Scullion. Of course, a man that resides now in Monaghan, but hails from Derry. And in fairness, Diarmuid, when we spoke to you on the run-up to the All-Ireland semi-finals, you called it. You thought it was going to be, well, you didn't think it. You said it. It's going to be a Donegal-Kerry final, and that's exactly what we got. But maybe we'll reflect back firstly on those semi-finals, and probably a damp squib after all the hype, the excitement, the great weather, Crow Park full, looking well. The games just unfortunately didn't live up to the billing.
Yeah, and look, I suppose if we started with Kerry's win over Tyrone on Saturday evening, there was only 6 points in it at the end, but there was almost that sinking feeling midway through the second half that the game was slipping away from Tyrone, and really it was Kerry's missed goal chances that kept Tyrone in the game for large spells. And look, that man David Clifford was again really hard to handle. And as we move into the All-Ireland final, like, he's going to be the name on everybody's lips as to how Donegal go about nullifying the threat of David. I also expected Donegal to have too much for me. I didn't imagine that it was going to be a 20-point hammering. And like, I followed football a long time, Sean, and it's rare you ever see two teams get into a semi-final and you see that gap in the scoreboard, particularly for a Meath team that we had been building up. They'd already beat Dublin in the Leinster Championship. They'd already beat Kerry in the All-Ireland Group Series, and they'd already knocked out Galway. So I felt it was a Meath team that was coming nicely to the boil, but Donegal really dismantled that notion, and the second half goals put a real gap to the scoreboard. So look, Meath would be disappointed that they couldn't have put up a better showing. The first half injury to Brian Menton probably had a big effect in the game, but you have to hand it to Donegal. They were awesome, and Kerry as well against Tyrone. Like, for all their, they've had ups and downs this year in terms of some of the performances. When they got to that semi-final, they were getting back into form, and I mentioned about the missed goal chances, but perhaps they're saving a few of those for the next day.
Perhaps is right, yeah, and that could be the concern for Donegal. But when you look back over the championship, you're looking at your Munster champions and your Ulster champions being in the decider. So it's amazing, with all group stages, with all back doors, it's still the teams that showed the form through the provincial competition that are there on the big day.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And for Donegal, it's this All-Ireland final is going to be their 11th game in the championship. They've come from the preliminary round win against Derry right through the Ulster Championship. For Kerry, they're now looking for their 39th All-Ireland win. And we'll probably touch on the two managers, but like, Jim McGuinness will get a lot of media play over the next few days. But Jack O'Connor has done a fantastic job with Kerry, and this is his 8th final, having had 4 previous wins in the 7 finals that he'd been in previously. And perhaps an ominous stat for Donegal is that each year that Jack O'Connor has led Kerry to an All-Ireland title, they've preceded that with a National League title win in the same season. And Kerry are the current National League champions from this year, and they'll be hoping to back that up with another double for Jack O'Connor now this weekend.
It goes to show, and there'll just be a lot of talk about the number of championship games that you have to play, or you do play, or the competitiveness of the province that you're coming out of. If you get into that winning mentality, success breeds success, form carries you through, and that's been proven here.
Yeah, and look, the only blip for Donegal this year has been they had to go and play Tyrone a week after winning the Ulster title, and Tyrone beat them in Ballygofay, but largely it's been business as usual for Donegal. What I've been really impressed with them has been their use of the bench as well. Their captain, in Patrick McBrearty, he starts most big games from the bench and comes on to be almost like a finisher and an impact forward. He's proven to be very difficult to handle as he's come in the games, and Donegal just looked like they perhaps got into this game with the benefit of taking Michael Murphy and Ryan McHugh off in their semi-finals, it leaves them that they should be feeling fresh. The only concern perhaps they might have is that they weren't really tested in that game against Meath, but they've had plenty of championship wins under their belt this year, so I don't see that as being too big of an issue for Donegal.
No, and maybe we'll just focus on the Ulster side for the moment. And you mentioned there about the way they dismantled Meath. In fairness, we in Monaghan seen how they can dismantle you as well. They turned around a 7-point deficit to win by 6. That's a 13-point turnaround in the quarter final. It was similar, Meath, with thereabouts in the opening quarter. It was very telling Meath were going for the 2-pointers. They weren't going to carry the ball into that, I suppose, defensive arc that Donegal have. When them scores didn't come their way, maybe it deflated them a bit. They lost Brian Menton and lost complete control around the middle of the field then as well. But in saying that, Donegal still, they seem to have a game plan and a tactic for no matter what they come up against.
Yeah, and look, Meath played with the breeze in that first half, and as you mentioned, they have been, the 2-point scores has been a big thing for Meath in this year's championship. Compare that with Donegal. Donegal kicked 326 in that semi-final. Only one 2-pointer kicked, and that was a free by Michael Murphy. So Donegal largely stick to getting the ball into the high percentage scoring zone and getting the ball over the bar. Meath have been playing around the arc and hoping to get shots off to get 2-pointers, almost to give them that lift that a 2-point score can give you. You mentioned the loss of Brian Menton, and for early stages in that game, I thought Meath were competing well with Donegal. Menton went off injured, and from Menton's injury until the end of the first half, Meath lost 9 of their 11 kickouts, and that just gave Donegal a foothold. It put the ball in the hands of the Donegal players, and with the new rules as well, it's very difficult to get the ball back when you're losing no kickouts. And Donegal took over in that sort of latter stages of the first half, and then they just really finished the job in the second half.
Yeah, and one very telling thing about Donegal, and maybe a lot of teams now have this in their arsenal, the turnovers and the number of occasions where they turned the ball over, right back maybe on their own 20-metre line, 13-metre line, the speed of transition to get it up the field then as well.
Yeah, and Donegal to me look like they're a team that are built around thriving off winning turnovers off the opposition. And when you look through their backline and you see the likes of Ryan McHugh, Owen Van Gallagher, Patrick Morgan, Kieran Moore is usually back there as well. These are players, Finbar Rorty, who's only a 19-year-old, these are players that when they get a sniff of a turnover, it's how fast Donegal get from maybe deep inside their own defensive zone into the attacking third, and then they're getting the likes of Conor O'Donnell, Michael Murphy, Michael Langan coming off the shoulders and kicking scores, trying to almost get fast breakaway scores before the opposition get a chance to set up their defensive shield. And it's the flip whenever Donegal lose possession. Donegal are very quick to race players back to their own defensive arc. They're sometimes happy enough that you take the odd pot shot for a 2-pointer, but they're certainly not letting you into the high percentage scoring zone. And you factor that in along with their dominance on kickouts, and particularly the ability of Sean Patton to find his man off his own kickout. It gives you a really good platform to play football underneath these new rules. And of course, there's a Donegal side that's flying fit. They're well prepped by Jim McGuinness. Psychologically, they're a team that seem to be on a mission, and it makes for a fascinating final to see how they take on a Kerry team who never really had any issues about getting up for big games, particularly semi-finals and finals. And this is a repeat of the 2014 final, which kind of was made famous for Donegal went into that final in 2014, having knocked out Dublin in an ambush in the semi-final. Everybody expected Donegal to be fit to go at Kerry in the same way, and Kerry were fit to almost suck the life out of Donegal on that day. And a Kieran Donaghy goal off a mistake from a Donegal kickout was enough to give Kerry the win. So it makes for a real interesting game coming up.
It certainly does. How big a factor is Michael Murphy in all of this? I know he's been lauded, he's been talked up, but even in games, I'm not saying that he goes in and out of them, but it's not everything has to go through him. It's nearly a case when they are under the little bit of pressure, then they go to him, or they look for him maybe just to give the lift again.
Yeah, look, Michael Murphy's a key man in pretty much every aspect of Donegal's play. Like, he didn't play the last 2 years, and Donegal lost narrowly in an All-Ireland semi-final to Galway last year. He was part of the FRC. He was one of those men in the think tank around designing these rules, decided to come back out of retirement. He's got another Ulster Championship medal this year. But the importance of Donegal, like he brings a calming influence when he's standing over free kicks. You know he's going to kick the ball over the bar. He's a target for long kickouts. And you think back to whenever Monaghan were on top of Donegal in that All-Ireland quarter-final and really pressing Sean Patton's kickouts. Monaghan had just scored a goal off a kick-out mistake. Micheál Bannigan put the ball in the net at the canal end. The next kick-out was targeted Michael Murphy. And that showed to me just the importance of him, that he was the go-to man. And I often think, and Michael Murphy gets a lot of, there's been a lot of criticism at times in the press and online about some of his tackles and the impact he's hitting. I sometimes think that that's Michael Murphy almost setting a statement out for his own team, that he gets in these heavy, hard hits early on in a game, probably taking the chance that a referee's not going to be too sore on him early on in the match, but it sets the tone for him and it sets the tone for his teammates. And I suppose it throws a gauntlet down to the opposition that Donegal are here and that they mean business. And like Michael Murphy, he's a generational talent. He only has one All-Ireland medal. This is his chance to win a second. David Clifford on the other side has only got one All-Ireland medal. That's about to change for one of those two men on Sunday.
It certainly is. You'd envisage there could be a lot more opportunities for David Clifford, mind you, than there would be for a certain Michael Murphy. But what a coup it was for Jim McGuinness. And you'd imagine him stepping back in to take the role. The deal must have been done that Michael's coming too, or the conversation would have been had. You just wonder, would he have been there if he hadn't had Michael on board?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, Sean. And you look at how Donegal, like I recently watched back the game against Galway last year. They struggled for long spells in the game with the running power that Galway brought to it. This year it's been a complete contrast for Donegal, where they've been largely, they're the team that's doing all the running. You add in the likes of Kieran Moore and young Finbar Rorty, who's only 19. Like Finbar Rorty was famous 2 years ago in the McKenna Cup, where he was too young to play, but Jim McGuinness played him anyway. Yeah. And they ended up having to concede a game or lost the points from a game that they won. That showed you at that point how highly rated the youngest player in the Donegal squad was by Jim McGuinness. And then you add in this year that they brought back Michael Murphy, their oldest, most seasoned player, their All-Ireland winning captain from 2012. And like from that 2014 All-Ireland final when Kerry played Donegal, only Michael Murphy, Ryan McHugh and Patrick McCready remain from the Donegal side. And those players have been the key men for Donegal over the last 12 years. And it was vital for Jim McGuinness to get Murphy back involved this year. And I feel that Donegal probably wouldn't be where they're at now only for getting Murphy back in.
Absolutely. The siege mentality that Jim has maybe built around, I'll not say the team, it's nearly with the county. And I'm not too sure if it was a conversation I had with yourself or with others in this, that he's always very pointed that it's Donegal as a county and it's the Donegal people that he feels an grievance for when they were maybe being brought to certain grounds to play games and the opposition didn't have to travel as far, or the thought that an Ulster final was going to be played in Croke Park as well. He plays a brilliant psychology game as well as a tactical game, doesn't he?
He's always looking for an angle, and I mean, even when he first got reappointed for his second term now as Donegal manager, the first thing he did was spent X amount of thousands of euros at their training ground to black out the fence around the pitch so that nobody could go and sneak a peek or spy or get a look in at what Donegal are doing in training. And I mean, Donegal is one of the most remote counties in Ireland. If you're going to go to Donegal to watch some training, you're going to be fairly well noticed, but Jim was adamant that this fence had to go up anyway. Since that, he's always been looking for a psychological angle that he can almost galvanise his playing group, but also build up his own support. So you talk about travelling to play, was it Mayo in the neutral game in the All-Ireland series? There was an issue with that. There could something come out in the next few days, you wouldn't know. Interesting to note that both teams have agreed to change their jerseys for this clash. So that was announced just recently there, that Kerry's going to wear their navy strip, Donegal's going to wear their white away strip. So in 2014, when the two teams played, they wore their traditional colours, and it did create a bit of a colour clash on the day. And Paul Durkin in goals for Donegal miskicked a kick out that day straight into the hands of Kieran Donaghy. We don't know if it was just a mistake from the kick out or did he actually see what he thought was one of his own players, but we're not going to have that problem now on Sunday.
No, we're certainly not, but you can imagine Jim will use that then as well. And I take it, have you been up round Convoy? Have you gone to see the setup with Donegal? I actually was
Yeah,
up there myself recently, and I made a point of travelling out to see it, and I couldn't get over it. That there is actual screen fencing around
yeah.
the training field.
You've the screen fence around the training field. That's where they train. That's where they play all the challenge games. And I'm even led to believe that an opposition team coming to play a challenge game can't video their own team playing against Donegal. But such is the secrecy that Jim likes to keep around that. And look, he likes a wee bit of spying himself, because that, again, I mentioned that 2014 final. There was a man up a tree in Killarney trying to see what was going on in Kerry's training session, and he had a strong Donegal accent. So these things, there's a bit of fun behind it all. But like you mentioned it earlier, for Jim, it's largely about. I often listen to his interviews, and I think to myself, what does he actually mean behind this? Who is he actually talking to? And it has to be for his own players, and it has to be for his own supporters. So he might get a dig in the media, but it's always well thought out and well planned, and he's a shrewd man. He knows what he's at.
Oh, absolutely. And if he brings Sam Maguire back to the hills again, nobody will ever care about screens round fields or not being able to video or anything like that. Like he'll have done what he's done. I don't think there's any trees even around the area in Convoy, so there'll definitely be no Kerry men up the trees. And I'd say any trees down in Kerry are probably being cut. You're right. I recall that at that time. And just turning maybe to Kerry, and dare we say, I'm not going to say a completely different animal, but a completely different approach. They're still old school football in their approach, and probably in how they play it then as well. And they have arguably one of the best footballers ever. When you hear the likes of Sean Kavanagh coming out and lauding a David Clifford, you know he's on a completely different level.
Yeah, look, he is without doubt the standout player in Gaelic games at the moment. It's almost like when when the final whistle goes with David Clifford, it's like Beatlemania. Such is the crowd that goes after him. I've seen him in games in Clones where the final whistle goes, he almost has to get down the tunnel in a National League game as fast as possible, because young boys and girls want to get his autograph. You see the reaction to him when he comes out from media work and media interviews. He is a generational talent, and for the success of Kerry in this All-Ireland final, a large part of it is going to come down to the performance of David Clifford. And like, I often think back to like Dublin beat Kerry in the 2023 All-Ireland final. Mick Fitzsimmons was marking Clifford. David had an off day, and that largely fed into a Dublin victory. He's been in great form in recent games. Like, Clifford kicked 13 points against Armagh. He had 1-9 there against Tyrone, and again, probably 2 or 3 other goal chances that he could have taken as well. And it creates a real headache for Donegal, because you want to try and man mark Clifford, but if you put too much emphasis on him, the likes of Sean O'Shea and Paddy Clifford are equally good at kicking over points. The risk being then, if you were to push out on the likes of a Sean O'Shea, you're leaving David Clifford 1v1 inside. So I think it's going to be fascinating how Donegal set up early on to just to combat the influence of David Clifford. And like, I thought even in the Tyrone game, which early on in the match, when Tyrone were keeping themselves in the game, like up to about the 28th or 29th minute, Tyrone were largely in the lead. That was down to kick-out dominance, where Tyrone had won 7 out of Kerry's 11 kick-outs up until the 30th minute. And what that meant was Tyrone had hands on the wall. You didn't need to worry about David Clifford, because Tyrone were on the attack. And when Kerry finally got to grips with their own kick-out and started getting a decent supply of ball into David Clifford and the likes of Paddy inside, that was really where the turn in the game was. And the likes of Big Joe O'Connor in midfield had a real powerhouse of a game. And Kerry will probably need a big performance from him again. But it's going to be probably the David Clifford show, largely in terms of how Kerry want to get the most out of this game for themselves.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about Clifford, is that he is genuinely maybe near next impossible to stop. Maybe you try to stop the supply of ball coming into him, or as you noted, he has an off day himself. He has an incredibly relaxed, languid style of play. When he gets the ball to his hand, he seems very loose in how he approaches, how he plays it, but he's so proficient off both feet. His movement is incredible. Physically, he can match it up as well. He literally is everything.
Yeah, and look, as a team, you're probably going to have to accept that David Clifford is going to score off you. Like it's next to impossible to defend against. You have to cut the supply into him. You probably have to have somebody, your best man marker on him, and hope that they can do a job as well. And you're probably going to need covering defenders to get back to support. But he's still going to score. And I've seen David Clifford from when he was a county minor. I remember him scoring 4 goals and 4 points against Derry in an All-Ireland minor final and tearing the team to pieces. And that was him as a 17 or 18-year-old. He's just one of those players that for Donegal, Brendan McCole has been taking on all the big man marking jobs, and it's going to be a really difficult task for Brendan in this game. But he just has to accept it and get on with it. Try and limit the damage, cut off the supply, and at the other end, try not to cough up any turnovers, because one thing about Kerry is they're still the best exponents of kicking and catching within the game. And if you were to hand the ball back through and a sloppy turnover, Kerry are going to have within 2 kick passes, they're looking to find the ball in David's hands, and that's where he does real damage. And like what I love watching about David Clifford is his ability off both sides, his right hand, his left hand in terms of a dummy bounce going past the defender, his solos off the right or the left to buy himself a few yards, and his ability to kick effortlessly at a score. He makes it look so easy, but it is going to be a difficult task for Donegal, and how they go about making their decision around, first of all, are we going to put all their eggs in the David Clifford basket and try and nullify him, or do we hope that by limiting the supply of ball and leaving perhaps Brendan McCole on him and hoping that he can do his best job as possible, that might be enough to get them over the line?
Absolutely, but you did touch on one thing there where Tyrone maybe did have them. If you have the ball, David Clifford doesn't have the ball, and that's the important thing. And looking at that, the 2 keepers, the big contrast here. Sean Patton, we know what he's capable of, and his kick-outs and that. Shane Ryan, possibly maybe not quite in that same sphere as what Sean Patton would be, and that probably could be a target for Donegal.
Yeah, I fully expect Donegal to try and put real pressure on Shane Ryan's kickouts, because you just can't be handing the ball easily over into the hands of a Kerry player. And Donegal are well matched in terms of going for a kick-out press, because they have big men around the middle, the likes of Kieran Thompson, Michael Langan. These are all boys that are club or inter-county midfielders and can field the ball. Throw in the likes of Jason McGee, who was on the bench the last time came in. Donegal are well set up in terms of pressurising the kick-out. Sean Patton at the other end is, to me, just when he's on form, it's like watching a golfer strike the ball, such as his technique at his kickouts. And even with just 2 steps back, he can still get a kickout going beyond the halfway line, and that's going to make it really difficult for the likes of Kerry, because if Kerry decide that they're going to really press and go after Donegal's kickouts, we've seen in the past where Donegal will look for that long kickout to Michael Murphy. It'll be a flick down, and you can guarantee the likes of Ryan McHugh or a Kieran Moore or some of those flyers are going to be coming off the ball and racing in towards the goals for a breakaway score, such as they did in 2014 when Dublin went after Donegal's kickouts, and Donegal decided we're just going to go long to Murphy and we're hoping to win the flick-ons and get scores from that.
It has the makings of being, and I know we were into the semi-finals thinking we had the makings of 2 great games, but this definitely has the makings of it. The rules have they've opened up the championship so much, and high scoring and the spectacle that it is. And now you've the 2, as I started off by saying, the 2 form teams coming in, the 2 teams that have probably adapted best to the rules, the 2 teams that have the best players to adapt to the rules then as well. It is the makings of being a classic.
Yeah, and look, the interest that there is in football at the moment, Sean, around, like you mentioned, the new rules. Like our quarterfinals were the best attended quarterfinals we've had in a number of years. Our semi-finals, you had a sellout last Sunday in terms of the Donegal Meath game. You had 70,000 in for the Tyrone and Kerry game. Like the interest from the public has been at its greatest we've had in a number of years. You've got 2 fantastic teams, and you've mentioned 2 teams that have adapted really well to the rules, and both teams have adapted to the rules in their own different ways. Yeah. Kerry have used their ability to kick past the ball and try and find the likes of the Cliffords inside in space where you've had to keep your 3 men up. It's really suited Kerry because of the threat of the 2 Cliffords that they can play their what has always been their traditional kicking game. Donegal were always known for the running game, for support players coming off the shoulder, for playing low risk and low error football. The new rules have allowed them to do that because they've built their team around counter-attacking players. So there's a contrast of styles. We've got two brilliant managers on the sideline who have fantastic records within the game. It just makes for a game that we can all really look forward to.
Absolutely. Just one final thing, you noted it back in the early part of the conversation. Donegal have that tendency to sit back inside. They use the second arc, the scoring arc now as their defensive line, and they're nearly invite you on, well, if you want to take a 2-pointer, take a 2-pointer. You can't afford to do that to Kerry. Shawnee O'Shea, Paddy Clifford, David Clifford, these guys will get the 2-pointers. Meath, I think a stat said they left 7 2-pointers behind, and that was 14 points they left behind them. Kerry won't do that.
No, and that's where the risk for Donegal lies, that if they press out round the arc and you go man-to-man with Sean O'Shea, and I thought for the semi-final against Tyrone, I thought Joe O'Connor was brilliant on the fringes of the arc where he was fit to give a forward pass and then run off the shoulder, breaking into the space that was left to create goal chances. If you put your main men in round the arc and you're marking the likes of a Clifford, Sean O'Shea kicked gloriously against Armagh in that quarter-final that got carried through to the semi-final. That is the risk with what Donegal are faced with. Do they press out around the arc and maybe leave the risk of a 1v1 inside, or do you take your chances and hope that maybe the ball will tail wide, that they'll miss? And that semi-final, Meath, of their 2-point efforts, six of those wides came in the first half, which was really demoralising, particularly as they had the breeze at that time. The conditions could play a bit of a part as well, depending on what way the wind is blowing and how far out either team will want to press. But it just makes it really, it's a fascinating tactical battle to watch for early on in the game, just how Donegal are defending. And I often look at the likes of Ryan McHugh and see where he positions himself, because he generally races straight back, gets inside the arc, and then looks to face out to the opposition coming at him, and he decides when he wants to press. If he's dropping back in and looking out, you can be sure that some of the likes of the Sean O'Shea, even the likes of David or Paddy coming out round, they'll be looking for those long range efforts.
Absolutely. There's one little fascinating fact that has come out of the new rules as well. All the conversations we're having now, Diarmuid, we're talking about scoring, we're talking about forwards, we're talking about the arcs and the scoring arc and where the scores will come from. There's no talk anymore of blanket defences or sweepers. You'd even be hard pressed to even focus on what way defensively teams will be working now. It's all about forward play. And again, it's been brilliant from the rules perspective, hasn't it?
It's been brilliant. And look, the next evolution of that will be really good 1v1 defenders will start to get their reward, because the importance now of a team like if you have a really good player that can defend 1v1 that doesn't need extra men back in front of them, that type of defender is going to become really worth their weight in gold over the next couple of years. You're absolutely right, Sean. The impact that the rules have had, particularly around scoring now, is it's opened up the game. Kickouts having to go beyond the 40-metre arc, passes not going back to the goalkeeper within their own half. It's created a game where there's much more transitions. There's less of that sort of stagnant keep ball, keep possession type of football that we would have associated with the game over the last few years. The game's become much more end-to-end, and that has meant that forwards now are getting the ball in 1v1 or 2v2 situations where they can take on the man, they can create goal chances, and it just makes for a much better spectacle. But these rules will evolve, and you will see the likes of your old school defenders that were really good in a 1v1 battle. That's what I'm really looking forward to seeing over the next few years, because you're right, the forward play has been excellent, and it's great that that's what we're focusing on and talking about.
Absolutely. Very quickly, you're involved obviously heavily in coaching yourself, both at club level in Monaghan with Scotstown, and of course you're part of the management team at Diarmuid Scullion and Westmeath. Have you seen, well, there's no point in saying have you seen, there is an evolving of the coaching, I take it then as well, that has come to that it is man on man nearly is the focus now again, is it?
Yeah, and look, the fact that you only get 11 men back within your own defensive shape has transformed the game as well. Like we'd seen in the past where if teams were under a wee bit of pressure, like if you were playing David Clifford under the old rules, there's no doubt you'd have seen 14 outfield Donegal players at times clogging up the scoring zone and making it really difficult and really frustrating for a top forward talent like Clifford to perform to the best of his ability. the game has changed. Coaching, you're right. It's finding players now that can be good in a 1v1 situation, whether that be on the attack and they can beat their man and thus create an overlap, or a really good 1v1 player whenever the opposition man has the ball and he can defend and maybe win a turnover for you. And the beauty of that is that when you win turnovers, you know you've already got at least 3 players up ahead of you in the attacking half of the pitch that you can then let the ball move quickly to. So what I love about the rules now is it's for top players. The best players can excel under these rules. It's very difficult to put a blanket around a David Clifford. Even with the best defending now under these rules, Clifford's still going to come out with a large percentage of scores within the game, and that can only be good for Gaelic football.
Oh, absolutely. I was stalling it, you know that. That's what I was doing, Diarmuid, because I have to put you now on the spot and call it. Who do you see climbing the steps of the Hogan to be lifting the Sam Maguire?
Look, I fancy it to be Patrick McBrearty, Donegal's captain. I think Donegal, to me, just look like they've got the platform to put together a real good performance in this final. And we're talking about from goalkeeper in Sean Patton to have an athletic and ball carrying and football playing defenders in the likes of Ryan McHugh and Patter Mogan, and then to having a midfielder, Michael Langan, who can pop up and kick scores, both goals and points from play. And then when you've got the likes of Oisin Gallen and Patrick or Michael Murphy, Conor O'Donnell ahead of you to let the ball in, and Patrick McBrearty probably coming off the bench. I just think Donegal have a little bit too much. They've been a team that I've sort of described you earlier in the year as a team on a mission. My view on that hasn't changed. But again, I do expect Kerry to give them, their fill of it in this final. Kerry teams don't lie down in an All-Ireland final. It's what Kerry football is all about. And like we talked about Jim McGuinness getting a little bit of a barb at his own supporters and his own players at times. Jack O'Connor has been very vocal in Kerry in recent weeks and months about the importance of Kerry people getting out and supporting their players and backing them in these big games. And like where Kerry have maybe it's been a bit of an advantage for them in their last 2 games. They've played 2 Ulster teams. They've knocked out Tyrone in the semi-final. They've knocked out Armagh in the quarter-final. That's really good preparation for Kerry going into this game against Donegal. But I just have that feeling, Sean, that Donegal by maybe 3 or 4 points at the final whistle, but expected to go all the way.
Absolutely. So you're backing Jimmy to be continuing to win matches then, so you are, Diarmuid. Thanks a million.
Thank you, John.
No bother. Thanking you indeed. And a reminder to you again, the Monaghan Way episode brought to you here with association to Northern Sound. And as always, you can check out more on the Apple platforms, of course, YouTube streaming and any other platforms that you pick up on for your podcasts.